Hello, Comics Alternative fans. Before we start with the episode, we want to invite all of you to check out our Patreon campaign.
That's right. Go to www.patreon.com/comicsalternative for more details. There you'll find more information about the campaign and the cool rewards levels we have.
For as little as $1 a month, you can help us maintain good quality comics talk, and the more you contribute, the more perks you get.
These include monthly podcast episodes exclusive to Patreon supporters, as well as the chance to help us choose which books we review on the show. So be sure to visit www.patreon.com/comicsalternative and become one of our proud podcast patrons.
Yeah, and now on with the show.
This is the Comics Alternative, episode 147, a look at the August Previews catalog.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Hey, fellers, that's my birthday cake.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And it's the beginning of the month. That means it's time to look at the Previews catalog. So on this episode, Andy and I are going to take a look through the August one. But before we get to that, we want to let all of our listeners know that this episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by the great folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you'll find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are at 20 to 35% off of the cover price. And every single month, you're going to find some incredible specials. Sometimes you'll find specials that are 45% off cover price. Sometimes at 50% off cover price. But many times, you'll see discounts that are more impressive than that.
That's right, and since we're at the beginning of the month, we don't have the new solicitations up, but this is our previews episode, and so you can anticipate that many of the things we talk about will be some of the stuff that's discounted on DCB service for August.
That's right. You can always count on great discounts. Go to their website and find out what they're going to be for August. That's dcbservice.com. Go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right.
Well, Andy, this is an important episode. Now, I guess every episode of ours is important, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, essential.
Essential, that's right, essential listening. And, this is our August preview show for 2015, but even more significant, this happens to be our 3-year anniversary.
Wow.
Aha! Happy birthday! Thank you, honey. Happy birthday! Aha!
So if the podcast were a baby, that baby would, what stage? I don't know what stage babies are. Would be driver's license? Is that I don't have kids, so I don't know when that stuff happens.
Yeah, we would at least be on our feet, and we may be out of diapers. Who knows?
Okay.
It's been a long time since I've been at that stage.
I was a little off, too, so, yeah.
But, yeah, it's our 3-year anniversary. Our first episode of the Comics Alternative, which, we talked about what we plan to do. We called it an Alternative Comics Manifesto. That went up, I think, on August 1st, 2012. So we are 3 years in, and I checked before we started to record today, and right now we have a total of 270 episodes up.
Wow. Holy crap.
I know. Now this is... We did kind of a weird numbering system after we first got started. The numbered episodes of ours, and I think we're up to about, 147. This will be 147. But so it would seem like if we did a weekly show that we've only had about 147 up, but this is also counting the various interviews, our specials, our monthly manga, webcomic shows, on location. So all of that together, before this episode, not counting this one, is 270.
Yeah, so if we'd been a Marvel comic, we would have been canceled and relaunched 5 times by now.
At least. Yeah. So that's great. It's great to be around for 3 years. So happy birthday, Andy.
Yeah, happy birthday.
So there's that. And, one way to celebrate a birthday, in addition to having cake, and we hope that our listeners will send us some, but on the topic of our listeners, a better way of celebrating our birthday is to share the love, or to share the love that people have shared with us. And I was checking iTunes, and we have gotten recently a few ratings and 5-star reviews from people. So, for instance...
Oh, great.
Yeah, we missed this one from several weeks ago. Ricky Granger wrote, "While I usually enjoy the interviews of various independent comics creators, I was especially impressed by the recent interviews with the creators of The Humans due to the samples of Humans-related original music aired during the interview." Awesome. So there was that was actually from back in June. And then last month, in July, we had 2 people write us reviews. One, another guy named Derek, and he spells it the same way. This is Derek Burke. "Great interviews, commentary, and passion make this one of my favorite podcasts. Keep up the exceptional work, gentlemen." So, thank you, Derek.
It's nice.
And someone named Derek knows his stuff. I can attest to that.
Really? Okay. I've always thought you were the exception to the Derek that proves the rule.
Well, it depends on what the rule is.
Yeah. Well, okay.
And then someone going by the name of Punk Rock Cartooning Vado writes, "I started listening to Comics Alternative over 6 months ago. I mainly relied on the Comics Journal for any coverage of work outside the mainstream companies. I was relieved when I came across these guys. They cover a wide range of work outside of the superhero genre without the snobbery of other comics blogs." Ooh, that's cool. No snobbery. "Their analysis of the works are very thorough, regardless of whether it was a graphic novel bought at a Barnes & Noble or a mini-comic picked up at a convention. I've discovered numerous indie creators through this show. I highly recommend it." Wow. Great. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Punk Rock Cartooning Veto.
Yeah.
And then over the past week or two, we've gotten a few messages via email and Facebook. In fact, one we neglected to mention last week from Tim Comrie, who not only is a supporter of the show, but also one of the artists that we discussed a couple of weeks ago. He sent us I thought it was a really cool email that said, "I have no idea how you stay on top of all the podcasts and interviews you're currently doing, but I love hearing them. I really feel like I'm taking a free course sometimes." Maybe we should charge for this. I don't know. "It's also nice to hear you and Andy K together again. You guys have a dynamic that I find really endearing and hilarious, with Andy as the reluctant, lovable curmudgeon, and you, I guess Derek, as the ever-eager academic adventure seeker intent on adding more work to your plate. I also like the funny moments in which the roles I've described are reversed and you start swearing about DC solicits. Or Andy says there's no way for any anthologist to meet your long list of anthology criteria. All the best, Tim."
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about that letter a lot lately. So I feel like I very, very often do kind of counter you in some ways. Like last week when you went on for 2.5 hours about the introduction problem in the Spirit book, and I feel like, I don't know, am I an asshole? Does that make me an asshole when I do stuff like that?
Oh, no. We're the Siskel and Ebert of comics discussion.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Although both of those guys are dead.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah.
Oh.
I love them.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that's great. So maybe you and I can take turns at playing the curmudgeon.
Sure.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then one of our Patreon supporters got in touch with us soon after the last episode went up, when we were talking about that new DC collection, the aforementioned collection, without a decent intro of the Spirit. And he pointed out the Digital Comic Museum archives. He wanted to mention that we could find other work there that we would appreciate that. Spirit selections. And he said if our listeners, don't have the funds to get the new Spirit collection, they can go there and see some of the Spirit comics. So that's cool. That's digitalcomicmuseum.com. And then he tells us, you guys are likable and not snooty or overbearing.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use the Digital Comic Museum quite a bit. So I'm very happy that resource exists.
Yep.
And if listeners have never checked it out or used it, you can find it where Derek said. But I've gotten not to get off on a Blackhawk tangent, but they have every issue of Military Comics where Blackhawk premiered, Modern Comics, and the Blackhawk Quality series. So up to about issue 108 or so. So I got all those on a specially dedicated iPad.
Specially dedicated?
Yeah, because it maxes out the hard drive on the iPad, or the memory on the iPad, to have all the Digital Comic Museum books that I have on it.
Oh, cool. So it's not just a Blackhawk dedicated iPad.
It's mostly Blackhawk,
okay.
And then now that I think about it, I should put a logo on it. Blackhawk logo. And,
yeah, well, maybe you can maybe at the next con you can have someone draw it on there.
I could. A few years ago at Heroes Con, I don't think you were there that year, there was a cosplayer who was dressed as Lady Blackhawk, and she had an amazing costume, and she sewed her own Blackhawk patches. And so I need to someday get my own Blackhawk patch and contact her and see if she'll do it for me.
Wow. So you have her contact info?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, from like 4 years ago. Who knows if it's changed.
Oh. So, take Art Bozier's advice and his recommendation. Go to, and Andy's, digitalcomicmuseum.com for all your Blackhawk and other occasional digital comic needs. And then we had someone who contacted us via Facebook a little while back, and I've been corresponding with, and I made a discovery this past week. Okay, now this guy's name is Tristan Laurie, and when he first contacted me on Facebook, he said, "Hey, sirs of comics non-spandex clad, just wanted to extend my thanks for always putting out quality entertainment / information / madness. Here's to the CAP, Comics Alternative Podcast, existing forever and then some." So anyway, Tristan, very friendly guy, and every now and again he will email, or not email, but Facebook a message to me about something, asking if I've seen this or read that. And so just the other day, I went to his Facebook page and I noticed that he also lives in Frisco. So I thought, Frisco, Texas. Huh, what a coincidence. And then I saw that he goes to Centennial High School, which is where my daughter goes. And so I asked Zoe, do you have a classmate named Tristan? And she said, yeah. So Tristan is, I guess he's going to be an 11th grader, or at least he's in Centennial High School with my daughter Zoe. He listens to the podcast, and we have been conversing back and forth. I didn't even know that he was local. So Tristan, first and foremost, thank you for the kind words about the podcast, but also for the engaging Q&A we've been having every now and again on Facebook.
That is nice. That is nice. I don't know how I would feel if I were in high school and one of my parents started a friendship with one of my classmates, but we're in a different age now.
Yeah. Well, Zoe didn't seem too freaked.
Zoe seems pretty cash, you know. Seems pretty cool and relaxed about things.
For the most part. There are times where she may not fall into that descriptive category.
Oh, okay. Well, my limited experience.
Yeah.
Her public persona.
Yeah. Well, I think she was very much like that when you guys were talking at Heroes Con the other month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then finally, we got a message on Facebook from Jeremy Barnes, and this is interesting. He wrote us, was immediately interested in the fact of two intelligent guys talking about comics. Then I see the time of your podcast. Please do comic podcast listeners a favor, 10 to 15-minute reviews of new series a couple of times a week. And so I wrote him back and I explained, I think that's a great idea. I said, given the nature of our podcast, that's really not where we're going. I said, however, I could see a listener market for that, and not necessarily for the mainstream stuff, but for what we do, something outside of the big two, where someone does several episodes a week that are 10, 15 minutes long each, just kind of quick in and out. Now, given our recording schedule and the way that we've set up the podcast, that's not really where we're coming from. But I think that would be a great idea for a comics podcast if someone wanted to take Jeremy's advice.
Yeah, if I would love if our podcasts were only 15 minutes. This one is going to be already. I have a feeling that this one's going to be long.
Oh, because of this month's catalog?
And we've spent half an hour going through listener mail.
Not quite.
We've spent 45 minutes going through listener mail. And so that, we're going to end up with, and it's great. I love that we get these messages from listeners, and I thank everybody for that. But, I think that if Jeremy wants shorter podcasts, then, we just made this one longer by reading his message.
That's right.
So it kind of had the opposite effect of what he wanted.
Yeah. I just looked up at our timer, and we're about 15 minutes in the show. So, again, that's all. Thank you guys for listening to the Comics Alternative. Until next week, I'm Derek.
Oh, wait, and I'm Andy, yeah.
Oh. So, no, I mean, that is a good idea. And there are some podcasts that are shorter, regardless of topic, and there are some that are longer. It just depends on what the creators want to do and what the listeners gravitate towards. So we want to thank everyone for sending us messages, giving us ratings and reviews on iTunes, all of that. We appreciate the input.
Yes, absolutely.
And since, Andy, you're suspecting that this is going to be a longish episode, you want to go into the August previews catalog.
Yeah, let's go get started.
Now, I know that we've been seeing some of these upcoming Halloween Fest releases over the past 2 or 3 months, but this being the August catalog, this is 2 months before the October releases. And so, as we'll see as we go through the catalog, there are a lot of comics that are horror or Halloween-oriented in one way or another. But we do have the Halloween Fest comics. I don't know if you looked through that section on pages 26 and 27.
Just a little bit.
Okay. Anything stand out to you?
No, I don't actually. I'm not queued up to that. So if you have something, go ahead.
Oh, no. I mean, there's some that I'm going to find interesting. For instance, the Drawn In Quarterly, The Birth of Kitaro. I'm looking forward to that. IDW, Donald Duck's Halloween Scream. That's going to be interesting. And then Archie Comics is doing, I guess, another Chilling Adventures of Sabrina #1, the Halloween edition. But I mean,
yeah,
it should be interesting.
That's going to be a reprint like what they did last year with Afterlife with Archie #1, which I managed to get a load of copies of that and give out to my students.
And that's really good. So I'm glad they're doing that this coming Halloween Fest. Another one I'm really interested in is from Viz Media. This is going to be Junji Ito's Fragments of Horror Halloween special, because the Fragments of Horror just came out about a month and a half ago. And I love Junji Ito's stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also another one from Halloween a couple of years ago that I got a ton of copies of. What was that? Is it Spiral?
Something.
Yeah,
that. It wasn't Spiral, but I know what you're talking about. Actually, I think that was a free comic book day. That wasn't. Maybe it was Halloween. It was one of the two.
Yeah, I gave whatever it was. I gave it out at the same time I gave out Afterlife with Archies, but that may have been just a coincidence. And then, and then Marvel, interestingly, is doing the Doctor Strange: The Oath #1, which is the really nice Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin Doctor Strange series from several years ago. Possibly, I guess, maybe to whet people's appetite for the Doctor Strange movie coming out in a little while.
That's right. So anyway,
and the Jason Aaron and Chris Bacalo Doctor Strange comic.
Yeah. Oh, Uzumaki. Solicited. That was that title, Uzumaki.
Yeah.
But because they had just recently come out with that 3-in-1 edition. Okay. So, looking forward to celebrating Halloween Fest at the comic shop. Of course, you don't have one near you now. I'm sorry.
No.
No Halloween Fest for you.
Nope.
I'll enjoy it for the both of us.
Yeah, do that.
But let's get to the catalog proper, I guess. So,
sure.
The Dark Horse section. What in Dark Horse tickles your fancy?
Well, it seems like it gets to be a kind of a broken record to start with the Goon, but we've got the Goon. On page 37, a Goon Halloween one-shot. The Goon in Theater Bizarre. So the idea of Goon and a kind of horror freak show setting is great. And as it says, the Theater Bizarre is actually a real-life horror, real-life Halloween event held annually in Detroit that was created by artist John Donovan. So this is not only a new Goon one-shot, but one that's celebrating this particular annual event.
And with a character called Zombo the Clown.
Yeah, that's everything. That's everything you want. That's tapping into your. That somebody put an EKG monitor up to your nightmares, and the computer spit Zombo the Clown out.
Yeah, that's pants peeing fuel. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Maybe that's one we can talk on a Halloween special if we do one this year.
Yeah. And then I go to the next page with issue #1 of a 4-issue miniseries, Dead Vengeance by Bill Morrison. And this is set in 1940, and the tagline basically is a dead private investigator solves his own murder. In 1940, a phony body on exhibit in a carnival sideshow suddenly springs to life and shambles away. Not so phony after all. He is John Doe, radio commentator and archenemy of Detroit's notorious Purple Gang. But why did he disappear in 1930, and why did the mayor, the mob, and the cops all want him dead? So, there you go. It's got a little feeling of the DC's The Spectre character's origin there, but I like Bill Morrison's work, so I'll be curious to see what he does with this concept.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one as well. And the thing that's also notable about this solicit is we get what it is in essence 3 pages of the story. And this is like something you usually find in the Image section. You usually don't get this much of a sample in Dark Horse, but I'm glad that they've done this.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that one. Where do you go next in Dark Horse?
I jumped to 49, so if you have anything before then, go ahead.
Yeah, I have, just real quick on 47, maybe mention in passing. This is another one of those examples of, Dark Horse has picked up the EC Archives series. And we mentioned about 2 or 3 months ago, and I can't remember with which volume, now they're at the point of reprinting those first volumes of certain titles that Gemstone had originally put out several years ago, and they're doing the same thing with this one for Weird Science. And I think we're up to Weird Science volume, it's 3 or 4 right now, but they're reprinting one, and this is on page 47. So if you didn't get the original Gemstone EC Archives Weird Science Volume 1 back in, I think it was 2006, now you can get the Dark Horse release of Weird Science Volume 1.
Yep.
Okay, so you say you go where now? Page 49?
To page 49, yeah. And so we see in other places in the Dark Horse section, Dark Horse is continuing to put out reprints of the Warren line of comics in addition to the EC stuff that you just mentioned. And Warren is definitely a in the lineage, a descendant of EC.
Oh yeah.
And one of the characters, one of the other popular characters that recurred in Warren's comics, aside from Vampirella, was the Rook, who was a time-traveling adventure series. And so the Rook is going to return here, the new miniseries, number 1, written by Stephen Grant and drawn by Paul Gulacy. So they're a good team who is actually kind of, also from that era when the Rook was originally being published, though I don't think either of them actually worked on the original Rook series. But this was a comic, again, as a kid. Those Warren, I mentioned this with the Spirit stuff too. Those Warren comics always fascinated me when I was a kid because they seemed, forbidden. They seemed something that was like that I was not ready for yet. Right. And so I would see them on the newsstands. I would see them in different places. And so the covers are really what kind of fascinated me. And the Rook, for some reason, was one of those characters that stood out. I think, looking back now, too, though I don't think Howard Chaykin ever worked on the Rook, there's something kind of Chaykin-y to me about that character.
Chaykin-y?
Chaykin-y, yeah. Chaykin-esque. Oh, there you go. So I'm glad to see that character come back after a while.
Okay. Well, if we turn the page, every now and again we'll mention Dark Horse Presents, and this month the Carla Speed McNeil's Finder. It says, Finder returns to Dark Horse Presents with a new serial entitled Torch, and so there's something I think that makes this issue stand out. But I don't know, it almost goes without saying that almost every issue of Dark Horse Presents stands out each month in some way.
Yeah, that's true. I'm way behind on Dark Horse Presents, so
yeah,
I need to get caught up on that.
Do you have anything else?
And then on the page following that, speaking of Dark Horse Presents, is on page 52, Nexus Into the Past and Other Stories, which is reprinting various short serials that ran in Dark Horse Presents, 3 of them, in fact. And so this is good. So I've been wondering when they were going to do this, because it's actually been a while. It was in that Dark Horse Presents previous volume that these stories ran, and the return of Baron and Rude's Nexus. I've mentioned many times on the podcast that this is one of my top 5 favorite comic series of all time. So I'm glad that this collection is putting those things out for people, especially for readers who may not have gotten to read these stories in the original Dark Horse Presents. And I also wanted to take a chance to mention really quickly here, this also coincides with the Kickstarter campaign that Steve Rude is doing. I don't know if you've seen this.
No, I haven't.
He's trying to kickstart basically a weekly comic, a weekly comic that's in the kind of tabloid format of the Sunday comics, and it's going to include Nexus in it, new Nexus stories by Baron and Rude, and also the character the Moth that Steve Rude created, I think, for Dark Horse a number of years ago now, which also involved the circus. I don't know how far along that. I haven't checked up on that Kickstarter campaign to see how far along it is, but that was I thought that was interesting, not just to see the return of Nexus in that, but also that attempt to do that kind of format. So we'll see how that goes.
Now, we've gotten emails, actually a few times over the past month or two, about another Kickstarter that's going on right now that actually does have something, I think, like Sunday papers or Sunday newspapers.
The Sunday comics, yeah.
Right, yeah. In the title, but this is completely different.
Right.
Yeah,
this is just, Steve Rude's self-producing this.
Wow, okay. So there's something about that format that's catching on.
Yeah, and it may be there's kind of nostalgia. Nostalgia is a big part of the comics culture anyway. But that now with Kickstarter, you can also gauge the potential audience you have, or the real audience you would have for something like that.
Yeah. Where do you go next in Dark Horse?
I'm done with Dark Horse, so if you have more, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, on page 61, and this is David Rubin's The Hero. Now, if you remember, David Rubin is the one who did the Aurora West book last year. He did the illustration. And this is The Hero Book 2. Now, I did not read The Hero Book 1, but I've heard really good things about it. Now, have you heard anything about Rubin's Hero?
No, this is the first I've seen of it, in fact.
Yeah, and I can't remember when it was solicited, but I guess you and I didn't recognize anything. I had overlooked the fact that this was David Rubin of Aurora West.
Yeah.
So I didn't say anything. I didn't pay attention to it. And then I've heard a couple of people say that it's a really good take on heroes and myths. So I'm tempted to delve into this. Of course, I'd start with Heroes Volume 1, which is out now.
Yeah, it looks like that was originally solicited in February 2015. Yeah. So, yeah. And this one's coming out in December.
Yep. So that's something to check out, I guess. And then I only have one other thing in Dark Horse, and this is more in passing than anything, because this is Volume 2 of Osamu Tezuka's Astro Boy Omnibus. This is on page 71. And I want to mention this is because this is something that Dark Horse has been doing quite a bit of recently, and that is taking the manga that they publish and repackaging it in omnibus editions. So, we've mentioned it, a couple of times, the Kurosaga corpse delivery system that they've been collecting in right now, I guess, or the next one, the last one that was solicited was Omnibus Volume 2 of that series. And then just the other day, I got my first volume of the Oh My Goddess Omnibus. So this, I guess, is a good format for Dark Horse, because they're continuing to do this, and I think that's a great idea. And it's a great way for those who may not be familiar with these series to start with them, because you have like 2 or more volumes in one omnibus edition, so you can get a good chunk.
Yep.
And that's all I have in Dark Horse.
Okay. Do you go to Vertigo?
Yeah, I go to the DC section, but I have nothing, or DC Vertigo.
Yeah.
And before we get to Vertigo proper, I guess, I'll just mention something in passing, and this is that on page 130 and 131, Vertigo Graffiti Designs, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the Kevin O'Neill Gallery Edition.
Mm-hmm.
So, should be good art. I can't afford it. I'm not going to get it.
Yep.
But things that I can afford are in the Vertigo section proper. And, you know, over the past maybe year or so, you and I don't spend as much time in the Vertigo section as we used to when we first started the podcast. And we've commented several times on the fact that there just doesn't seem to be many new things coming out of Vertigo. But, you know, as we mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago, in some of the news coming out of San Diego, they're starting a whole new series of new titles. And we get several of these solicited in this month's catalog. So I think we have a few things to mention here.
Well, yeah, we've talked about some of these on other episodes, so I don't know how much to get in depth about them, but they are putting out, it looks like they're going to put out 4 a month then for 3 months, right, because I think there's 12 new series altogether. I don't necessarily like that strategy, because some stuff then can get buried even in our own discussions of them. We don't necessarily have the time to cover each and every one of these. But, you know, we have talked about how excited we are about Twilight Children by Gilbert Hernandez and Darwin Cook. Mm-hmm. So I am looking forward to that. In fact, I will get all of these, because I think that they all have great concepts behind them, and also some good creators like Gail Simone on The Clean Room, Mike Allred on Art Ops, and Lauren Bukis and Ryan Kelly on Survivors Club. So I will definitely I'll definitely check out all 4 of these, but whether I keep going with all of them is going to probably depend a bit.
Yeah, those are the 4 titles that you had mentioned that are solicited. Yeah. Twilight Children, Survivors Club, Clean Room, and Art Ops. But one of the things we get in this catalog now is a little more information in the solicits about what these titles are actually about. Mm-hmm. And I guess the one that I'm most interested in, maybe for obvious reasons, is Twilight's Children, because the way that they describe this, and it says, when a white orb washes up on the shore of a remote Latin American village, a group of children naturally poke at the strange object to see what it is. The orb explodes, leaving the children completely blind. And when a beautiful young woman who may be an alien is found wandering the seafront, she's taken in by the townspeople, but soon becomes a person of interest to a quirky pair of undercover CIA agents and the target of affection for a young scientist. Can they come together to prevent an all-out alien invasion and save the souls of this sleepy seaside town? And I don't know, I love that solicit because it just reeks of Gilbert Hernandez.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those disparate things in one title. I mean, this is like a lot of his Love and Rockets, or I guess his Palomar, but also his non-Palomar stories that he's been producing over the past several years. And the way that this is described, it seems like this is a story that could come out of Palomar.
Yeah, it could come out of Palomar. Also, that description reminded me, not so much in the details, but in the kind of feeling it registered, and in terms of Gilbert's work, reminded me of Grip.
Oh, definitely Grip. Mm. But I think with even some of the other stuff that he's been coming out, I mean, outside of the semi-autobiographical drawn-in quarterly works, but yeah, the CIA agents, the potential of the alien, the orb, the blindness, the kids, it looks exciting.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a really fascinating collaboration between those two creators. So yeah, and like I said, I'll get all of these. I think all of these fit in very interestingly into kind of high concepts, other than the Hernandez and Cookbook, because I think that their Vertigo's, looking to work with those creators. With Survivors Club, Clean Room, and Art Ops, I almost get the sense of Vertigo trying to recapture the success of iZombie as a TV series.
Right.
That they're looking for properties at Vertigo that aren't just going to be comic book series, but are going to have that kind of magic quality that's going to make them properties in other media as well. Because I can see Survivors Club, especially, the idea that the kids who were subject to all these various horrible experiences in 80s horror movie type scenarios, like being possessed by a poltergeist or trapped in a haunted house or having a killer doll, all that stuff, I could see that, having legs beyond just this comic. So the 6 grown-up survivors of like 80s horror movies band together for a new horror experience.
Yeah, I agree. Now, you mentioned iZombie. In fact, iZombie is referenced in the Art Ops solicit just because Mike Allred does the art. And I'm like you. I'm going to get all 4 of these new #1 issues in addition to the Twilight Children, the one of these 4 that I'm also really looking for, kind of most or second after the Hernandez Cook one, is Art Ops, just because of its concept where you have figures from art that escape the confines of the frame, and then they're being hunted down. So I really like the concept of Art Ops, although I have to tell you, I'm one of those guys, I know a lot of people like Michael Allred's art. I've always found it kind of touch and go for me. I mean, there's sometimes I like it, but then there are other times, and some of those times next week you and I are going to be doing a special show devoted to Fables, and I'm going back and rereading as much of the Fable stuff as I can from the very beginning. And I was reminded of this when some of the issues that Allred illustrated, the art didn't do anything for me.
Okay. Sometimes
it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that in Art Ops it will do something for me.
Yeah, I generally like Allred across the board, so... Yeah.
The only other thing I have in Vertigo is on page 141, and this is Kid Eternity Deluxe Edition. So if you didn't get any of the original Kid Eternity, now you can get it in a hardbound deluxe edition.
Yep.
So there's that. And I'm all done with DC Vertigo.
Yeah, I go in the top shelf in IDW.
Okay, so I guess you start about the same place that I do.
154?
Correct.
Yeah, so 154 reveals one of the gems of the month from previews, which is Troy Little's adaptation of Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. We also get 4 pages of preview art to this, and I really like what Little's doing with this. His style is really suited to the really trippy world that Thompson and his Samoan lawyer get caught up in the novel, or excuse me, in the book. Not really a novel, but so I'll be curious. I'm always a little leery about some some of these kinds of adaptations, but it really does look like Little's art captures the spirit of this book.
Yeah. Something else that I'm looking forward to as well. If you turn the page to 156, there's the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Nemo Trilogy Slipcase Edition. So if you didn't get the 3 Nemo books that Andy and we discussed a few months ago in light of the release of the latest one, then you can get the nice slipcase edition. I'm not going to get this because I have all 3 books, but...
Yeah. But I think at $40 too, that's a little less.
That is a good deal.
That's a little less than what you would have paid for those individually. So
yeah.
I was saying that, but it also leads me to wonder if they're going to actually collect those 3 into one volume then.
See, I thought that's what they were probably going to do, but then there was news the other month about the slipcase edition.
Yeah.
So
okay, I don't have anything until the Yo Books section on 183, so if you have other stuff in IDW, go ahead.
No, that's it. I go to 183 and 182 as well.
Okay.
So now on 182, we have issue number 9 of Haunted Horror. It's a special Halloween issue, which I found interesting because it's almost every, well, no, not almost, every issue of Haunted Horror is like a Halloween issue.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's funny that 19 is being singled out as the special Halloween issue. It's coming out in October, so. Yeah,
this is put together by, I guess, a special guest editor, Steve Baines, who does the Horror of It All Pre-Code Comics blog, put together this collection of stories this time instead of Craig.
And if this cover that we find on the solicit on 182 is what the actual cover is going to be, you have a little Yo Club symbol.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah. But it's on 183 where we get the 2 pretty major publications here from Yo Books, part of the chilling archives of horror comics.
Right.
Fiction House Comics, Ghosts and Girls, and the complete Voodoo Volume 1. So 2 different, I can't remember who published Voodoo, but going back into some of the non-EC horror comic, pre-code horror comics from the era and putting together larger collections of these. It looks nice.
Mm-hmm. Now, Fiction House Comics Ghost and Girls is, they say, curated by Michael Price.
Uh-huh.
And then Craig is the editor of The Complete Voodoo.
Right.
But they're both Yo Books, and they're part of the Chilling Archives. So I'm sensing that maybe around October would be another time to have Craig on the show.
Yeah, that would be good because I do enjoy these comics quite a bit, and both of them advertise having art by Matt Baker in them, and I always like coming across Matt Baker's work.
Mm-hmm. That's all I have in IDW.
I just want to hit the next page on page 184 and mention briefly.
I thought you might.
Yeah, Gil Kane's Undersea Agent. I think it's interesting that they call this Gil Kane's Undersea Agent. I guess they're reprinting all of the Undersea Agent stories that Gil Kane did. I don't think he was the only artist on that series. But Undersea Agent was part of the Thunder Agents universe. But one of the odd things about it was that if I got my information right, Undersea Agent actually ended up in the public domain because Tower Comics didn't quite, copyright it properly or whatever the legal issues are there. But you can actually find Undersea Agent comics in some of the public domain websites where you can Download Comics. But this is a great series. I'm a fan of the Thunder Agent stuff in general anyway, because of the great art that you got from Wally Wood and Reed Crandall and George Tuska and others who worked on those comics. But also the Gil Kane stuff in Undersea Agent is, of course, some of my favorite Gil Kane art. So it's a hardcover collection. It's only 72 pages, so it's a little thin, but it is nice stuff.
So anything else in IDW?
Nope.
Now we go to a place we usually spend a lot of time in, and that is the image section of the catalog.
Yep.
As Andy exhales.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this starts off with a couple of really interesting titles, one of which I'm very excited about. But the first one on page 188, and then we have 3 pages of sample art that follow, is Scotty Young's I Hate Fairyland, #1.
Yeah. This looks fun because, Scotty Young is a creator who is, most often known for his all ages comics.
Mm-hmm, like the Wizard of Oz stuff that he did with Marvel over the past several years.
Yeah, exactly. And now
he's Rocky Raccoon.
Yeah. Now he seems to be working something out. Whatever he's been repressing to do children's books is going to come out in I Hate Fairyland, which the first issue's cover has the little girl who's the protagonist of the series, Gert, a 6-year-old girl, with a bloody axe and a whole bunch of dead fairyland creatures at her feet. Mm-hmm. And then there's a variant cover that is that goes under the title "Fuck Fairyland." So I wonder if there's going to be if this is going to be a series that's going to come out into basically 2 titles. There's the I Hate Fairyland that you can show on the comic stands and not worry too much about that title getting a lot of attention. And then for those who really want it, you can get a comic called Fuck Fairyland.
Yeah. And also, I Hate Fairyland is on the cover of this month's previews.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is something that's interesting. And I was listening to another podcast, and they were interviewing Scotty, mm-hmm. and he had mentioned that part of the reason for this new title, well, one, he wanted to do his own creator own stuff, outside of Marvel, and that it is linked in some way, not necessarily reactive manner, to the earlier comics like the Wizard of Oz stuff that he did with Marvel. But he also mentioned that, with having young kids at home and having to watch on the TV all of those Disney / Nickelodeon / you name it, kid mm-hmm. shows, PBS over and over again, that after a while it was driving him crazy, and so the result is I Hate Fairyland.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that, but even more so, I'm looking forward to what's on page 192.
Uh-huh.
And that is Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chiang's Paper Girls.
Yeah, now we talked a little bit when we talked to Brian K. Vaughan on the show. We talked to him a little bit about this series since it had recently been announced that he and Cliff Chiang were doing this. But yeah, this I liked We Stand on Guard a lot, but this is the series that he announced that I'm most excited for because I'm also a big Cliff Chiang fan.
Mm-hmm. And this is going to be an ongoing series. So now, We Stand on Guard I can't remember, is that ongoing as well?
I thought so.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I started to second guess myself when I started to think about this then. But this is another one. So, man, Saga, Paper Girls, We Stand on Guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this, as the solicit says, the story takes place just after Halloween 1988, and 4 12-year-old newspaper delivery girls uncover the most important story of all time. So, there you go.
Yeah.
And the first issue is going to be double size, so 48 pages for $2.99 for that first issue.
That's good. I like it when creators do that, especially those with Image. Not everyone does, but I know that Vaughn has been known to do that, so we appreciate that as readers. Mm-hmm. Also, in the solicit, it's I've commented before in the show how sometimes I'm a tad annoyed by these references of new titles when you're trying to pitch it. It's something meets something else. Mm-hmm. This one is Stand By Me meets War of the Worlds.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I can't remember what I was listening to recently, but I was listening to a writer talk about why that is, that you get that something meets something else. That how that's become a kind of necessary thing when pitching any kind of concept, whether it's a new comic or a TV show or a movie.
Yeah.
And that's just part of the shorthand you need to use, and a lot of writers are just kind of accepting of the fact that they do have to come up with that, but they don't use it they don't allow it to hinder their creativity.
Yeah. Sometimes it annoys me, although, I mean, every time I hear this now or read it or see reference to this phenomena, I can't help but think of Altman's The Player, in that opening scene that is a reference to A Touch of Evil, but they actually parody that because everyone seems to be pitching something in that same manner. Mm-hmm. And I think Pretty Woman is one of those titles that they reference. Yeah,
and everything has to star Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts. Yeah. No, I love that scene. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff in Image, a lot of new stuff. So I jump ahead to 198. I don't know if you have anything else. If you stop along the way.
No, in fact, that's where I go next.
And so 198 has a new spy series by Anthony Johnston, codename Babushka: The Conclave of Death #1. So this is it's described as an action-packed modern pulp spy thriller full of high-stakes thrills and exotic locations, in the style of James Bond and Modesty Blaze. Anthony Johnston is maybe best known for Wasteland,
right?
And has done currently done The Fuse and Umbral for Image, which are on the kind of science fiction post-apocalyptic side. But where I first saw Anthony Johnston's work was on one of the Queen and Country spin-off miniseries from Greg Rucka's series. Mm-hmm. And so my first impression of Anthony Johnston was as a spy espionage writer. And so I liked what he did back then on that, and so I'm looking forward to this as well.
And one of the things that struck me about this, I mean, here we have another spy narrative that is Soviet-based, not long after the Dodsons read one.
Yeah.
So maybe and this, along with references to the 1980s, I mean, already we've referenced at least 2 titles that take place in the 1980s. So there may be some kind of nostalgia for the Cold War.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're going to be nostalgic for something, what a thing to be nostalgic for.
Well, yeah, we're probably cycling through that era where creators were either young during that time, or it was even just a little too early for them.
Yeah.
And so they're looking back on it the way, somebody my age might look back on the Beatles or something like that.
Yeah. I just hope that people don't start romanticizing Reagan. Of course, they always do, so. Yeah. But we won't go into politics there as much as I would like. But now, if we turn the page to 200, Sean Lewis and Benjamin Mackey's Saints #1. And in fact, right before we recorded this afternoon, we got, I don't know if you checked your emails, the Comics Alternative email, but we got an email from Sean Lewis telling us a little bit about Saints number 1, and there was a link to a press kit. So it's good to know that the creators are doing their part here to get the word out. So and this looks interesting. It says a Dexter-style action collides with Preacher-esque sensibility. So there you have again the reference to two previous narratives. Blaze, Lucy, and Sebastian discover a holy war is erupting, and they, unwittingly, are the next generation of saints poised to fight for a heaven that God has abandoned. The occult rises in a spectacular action-packed first issue, crammed full of heavy metal, sex, and deadly one-liners. And so I can see where they're coming from with the Preacher reference.
Yeah. I also get a little bit of the Wicked and Divine vibe, where the Wicked and Divine has this pantheon of gods who return in modern era. This is taking the concept of saints, but also on top of that, giving saints superpowers, which I find fascinating because having grown up Catholic, I was really, really often fascinated with the stories of the saints. And this book points to the fact that there probably is some connection between being into superheroes and being into certain kinds of, saint stories of the lives of saints. So I think that's a neat concept that really hasn't been explored.
Yeah. I hope that one pans out. It looks interesting. I know that I'll check it out. And I'm also going to check out what's on page 202. So if you turn the page, this is this year's Comic Book Legal Defense Fund's annual, the Liberty Annual, ANYOOL. And this is a takeoff on, I guess, a lot of the old Lampoon style humor publications, and in fact the font of Liberty Annual is like National Lampoon font. So right. And this has a number of creators whose names we will recognize: Peter Bagge, Jeffrey Brown, Joshua Fialkov, Art Spiegelman, Fred Van Lente, Gabriel Hardman, Ed Luce, and more. So this is Evan Dorkin, Tyler Crook. Yeah, so this is going to be fun to see. 48 pages.
Yep.
Plus it benefits the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. So right there, that's reason enough to get this. What else in Image do you find interesting?
There's stuff kind of scattered all over the place in here, and so I'm not sure where or when I should bring it up, because I had marked page 211, which has a whole bunch of different stuff on it, and that's where the first mention we get of the Satellite Sam Deluxe Edition.
Yeah,
but that comes up later.
Exactly. What you're mentioning, this is one of the problems. At first, I didn't think it was a problem. I kind of liked the way that Image had redesigned its previews section. Now I find it a little problematic. Not so much in going through, as we do every month, the previews catalog, but when I'm going through my DCB service, because I use DCB service, when I go through their ordering Excel file, and it's not as easy to go by page number when you get to the Image section. And I know what they're doing, because they're arranging information. There's some sections that are arranged by release date, which can be useful, but then there are other parts of the Image section where they are featuring just the new stuff. Like, for instance, you see Solicit by itself of Chew number 51 on page 220, and then earlier you get, I think, another reference to that. So, or at least elsewhere in the section, and it can get a little confusing. So, yeah, I'm with you. It's like, well, which page do I reference?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if this is before or after where you will ultimately go next. But this is something I want to mention real quick, because in light of what I just mentioned, the way that Image has rearranged its preview section, on page 216, Sex Criminals number 15.
Yeah.
Now, for the past couple or maybe 3 months, we've gotten these special issues, these variants where, Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky will also offer a wrapped edition that's supposed to be a little more lurid with a XXX cover.
Yeah.
And I think the first time they did that was with Brian Lee O'Malley.
Which just came out this last week.
Right. And I found it interesting that in those earlier issues where they do this, I think that these variant XXX covers get their own pages. I was a little disappointed that the only mention we get of the Hernandez brothers, of course they refer to them here as Los Bros Hernandez, is just by itself here without any context on page 216, because I was looking through this, and unless I'm missing something in the Image section of previews, this is the only reference to Sex Criminals Los Bros Hernandez XXX cover.
Yeah, well, I had that marked down too, because I'm ordering all of those variant covers anyway. So but the Hernandez brothers doing a cover of Sex Criminals is a very exciting proposition.
Yeah, see, for me, this is the most exciting of the ones that they've come out with. And not just because I love the Hernandez brothers, but I think that both of them, okay, so the first one was Brian Lee O'Malley. Who was it that's going to be coming out next month?
I can't remember.
Or this month, I guess. But I think that the Hernandez brothers, when it comes to explicitness, or at least the potential to explicitness, trumps all the other ones that they could list. So why not play this one up a little more? I don't know. Maybe because this is the third one. But I also find it interesting that they're referred to here as Los Bros Hernandez, because they do not like to be referred to as Los Bros Hernandez.
Well, I would assume that they gave the okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's anything that's going to break any decisions that they make, but
I think that's the fifth one of these covers, because number 11 is the Brian Lee O'Malley one.
Okay, but I can't remember any of the other people who were.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they're all going to be great, but I can't. My mind's not containing all that stuff anymore.
But I got the Brian Lee O'Malley, and I haven't gotten any of the others. I'll definitely get the Hernandez brothers ones. And the reason I didn't get the others is, okay, the first one I'll get. The Hernandez brothers I'll definitely get, just because it's the Hernandez brothers. But the others, I thought, okay, well, this is kind of a marketing ploy after the first time, so I didn't want to be a part of that, even though I like the title.
I like the idea. I'm not a huge fan of variant covers by any means, but I really like this idea of Fraction and Zdarsky doing this with these different artists.
Yeah. Well, I, as far as variant covers go, I think this is the way to go, because, like you, I just am not a fan of variant covers, and there at times, especially as practiced by Marvel, I found it downright annoying. Evil. It's evil.
I feel like in this instance, it is enhancing the comic rather than just kind of a marketing gimmick, as you said, or a money grab or anything like that. I feel like there's a strong reason behind it that makes me want to get these covers then instead of the regular cover.
And you're right. I mean, it does play into the tone, the fun tone of what we see in Sex Criminals. So I'm with you there. It's just, one of the reasons I'm not getting many of these is I've cut back on individual issues. Right. So, but if I were getting all individual issues of Sex Criminals, that's the way I'd go. But I'm definitely going to get the Hernandez brothers cover.
And then I go to 218.
Yep.
And then this is Black Magic with a CK.
Right.
By Magic with a CK. Black also has a CK, but we would know that. By Greg Rucka with art by Nicola Scott. And so this solicitation describes it as Detective Rowan Black, hence I guess the title, works robbery homicide for the Portsmouth PD, but her greatest mystery is the truth about herself, both who she has been and who she will become. Yet there are others in Rowan's world with very long memories, and the power that one person holds, another will always covet. And then each issue is also going to contain an original work of what I'm assuming is prose fiction by Greg Rucka.
Right.
This is yet another example of Rucka doing writing having a female detective as the protagonist, but also one who has a past that's haunting her. That's kind of the thing that Rucka does so well.
Exactly. And even if the female protagonist is not a detective, as is the case in, I guess you could say, Lazarus,
You're right.
Definitely in Vale. I mean, I think one of the stylistic features of Greg Rucka's, especially his creator-owned stuff, is the fact that he does so well narratives that feature a female protagonist, and he's able to get into them and understand them in a way that other male writers probably couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I want to get into the issue of male writers writing female characters, which has been kind of in the comic internet conversation lately.
Right.
I like Rucka's comics in general, and he does these things well. I'm also happy to see Nicola Scott working on a creator-owned project like this, especially one that has such potential for success. Rucka's work. I think you can put Rucka up there with Ed Brubaker and so on as guys who, when they're going to put out an Image book or a creator-owned book, that it's going to draw an audience.
Right. Now,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I want to make clear, because you said you didn't want to go down the road of gender representation. I didn't intend to, and I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting that, Rucka does it better than any woman could in representing a female protagonist. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, or what I'd said or attempted to say, is that I think that he does it in a way in the past as a creator that hasn't been problematic, at least for me. So I think he handles that really well, and also that's a signature style of his, because not all of his comics, but many of them, you can see that he tends to deal with female protagonists. So,
well, you said better than other male creators, and
better than some male creators.
Yeah, and that's where I was trying to steer away from that, because
recent news.
Yeah, but also because everybody has the opportunity to be a crappy writer. That's my opinion, right? Or a crappy creator, whether they're good at writing about their own, their own realm of experience or not.
Right.
So I think Rucka writes this type of character very well, and so anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. So with Nicola Scott, they list her other credits: Birds of Prey, Secret Six, and Earth 2. And this is an artist whose work I've really admired at DC on superhero books. So it's good to see that in this series with such strong potential. And the 4 pages of sample art that we get looks great.
Exactly. Yeah, this is one of those that I think normally would be one of the spotlight. Well, it says spotlight on this page, on page 1 or 218. But to me, this would be a title that would be either the very first or maybe the second featured in the Image section. But it's not. It's buried. Maybe that's not the right word, buried, but its solicit comes later in the section. So I don't know. To me, it's big news when Rucka comes up with something new, especially a new ongoing. Where do you go next in the Image?
That was 218. 223.
Oh, Camp Midnight?
Camp Midnight by Steven Seagle and Jason Adam Katzenstein, which is an all-ages original graphic novel created by Steven Seagle, who is one of the creators behind Ben 10.
Right.
And then New Yorker cartoonist Jason Adam Katzenstein. Mm-hmm. So and they compare it pretty much immediately to Raina Telgemeier's Smile. So this is Image, I think, putting out a book that's trying to capture that section, that huge audience that's out there for Telgemeier's books that isn't really been satisfied by the comics publishers that include Image.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons is because, most of the comics publishers, come out with monthlies or semi-monthlies, and that's, I don't know if you're going to get that audience with monthly titles, mm-hmm. although this is an original graphic novel, so you're right. This is something that could be featured in a Barnes & Noble and be sitting right next to Smile.
Yeah.
And not in the music section of Barnes & Nobles, because if it were sitting next to Smile, that'd be a whole other matter.
Yeah, that's true. That would be in with the Beach Boys.
Yep. By the way, I have yet to see that Brian Wilson movie, Love and Mercy, and I feel bad about it.
Oh, yeah.
Have you?
No.
Oh. And I'm a big Brian Wilson fan, and I kind of blew that off. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Brian.
Yeah, no, I'd like to see it too. And then, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of stuff in Image, maybe to whip through really quick for me. I don't know. We're parked here for a little while, but there's so
we usually are.
There's quite a few volume ones of paperback collections of Image series. So Injection, the first 5 issues of Warren Ellis and Declan Shalvey's Injection gets collected.
Are you liking that?
Oh, that's a series I actually have not. I've been waiting on the trade for that because I decided to move that way with Trees as well. Mm-hmm. So I never even got the first issue of Injection. Have you read it?
I've read the first 2 issues. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think the trade is something that... I think reading it in trade will probably be a good way for you to go.
Yeah, and I feel that way a bit about a couple down from there on page 227, Kaptara. I like the first by Chip Zdarsky and Kagan McLeod. I liked the first issue fine, but I felt like it read a lot like the first chapter of a collection rather than the first issue of a comic series, if that makes any sense. And so I decided after reading that first issue that I was going to switch and read that in trades after that. And it's $9.98 for that first Kaptara trade. That means
not $9.99.
Not $9.99, which they call chip cheap. And then I just had the previously mentioned Satellite Sam collection. So if there's anything else in there that you wanted to mention.
No, because the only other thing I had was 229, which is the Satellite Sam.
Yeah. So this is the way I was hoping that Satellite Sam would get collected as one big volume with all 15 issues in it. And so here it is. So if you didn't get a chance to read the individual issues or you want to have them all in one collection like this is good. I liked Satellite Sam a lot. It's not listing it as volume 1, however, though I know that that Fraction and Chaykin plan on continuing Satellite Sam into into Hollywood and other genres of popular television shows in the 50s.
So we'll go on?
That's what he said at Heroes Con. There was a big panel that he did with himself and Kelly Sue for their Milk-Fed Criminal Masterminds company. And one of the announcements he made was that Satellite Sam was going to... He and Chaikin want to continue doing it. He has a plan for the next volume to get... I don't know if this is spoiling anything, but to get into Westerns as a genre, which I think is a neat idea. And he also mentioned there, and this is something that's only hinted at in this solicitation. The solicitation says that there's an all-new epilogue created especially for this collection. Fraction said at that panel that it was 8 pages of additional story material that wrapped...
I guess that's...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I guess that's the bonus material that they reference.
That's the all-new epilogue that they reference.
Yeah.
I wonder if now what I don't know is the bonus material going to include the Tijuana Bible?
Ah.
That I'd be curious to see. But I have all the 15 issues of this, but I will still probably get this collection because I'm just in the tank for those guys.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Now... another reason why I wanted us to discuss Satellite Sam, this new deluxe hardcover edition, in addition to the fact that it is Satellite Sam, and I know that you and I both enjoy this title, this is becoming more of a trend with Image in that they are putting out more hardbound editions. Right, if you turn the page to 230, then you see a deluxe hardcover edition of Wayward, which collects a good number of issues as well, so 1 through 10. And this is where getting the trades or a decision to get the trades becomes a little tricky. If you want to get the individual issues, fine, but if you want to wait to the trades... okay, then you get the trades. But then if you prefer hardbound editions, which I do, kind of larger ones, deluxe editions if you want to call it that, then, well, should you get the trade or should you wait for the deluxe? And even though I do like the fact that Image is starting to do this more, I mean, look, last month we had a solicit of both Southern Bastards and Rat Queens coming out with hardcover editions. But if you had gotten the volumes 1 and 2 of both Southern Bastards and Rat Queens, then would you want to get the hardcover edition? So, I mean, I know that this is not the hardest decision to have to make in life, but wow, do you wait for the trade or will they come out with a hardcover edition? Should you wait for that? Okay, but I think it's just an interesting observation. And that's all I had in Image.
Yeah, I don't.
All I gotta say about Image.
I have nothing until page 260, which is the alternative comics section. So if you have anything else,
that's exactly where I go.
Okay, so
now we're in the back half of the catalog.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff in alternative comics now that they're, as we've mentioned before, doing this kind of, what are they, a collective?
Right, the co-op that they have, where Alternative Comics is distributing the releases of other smaller publishers. So, for instance, Hick and Hawk, Revival House,
Study
Group. So there's a lot there. I mean, Titan #1. Andy Wolverton and I just recently talked about Titan on the July webcomics show. So it's good to see that hard copy issue 2 of Titan is coming out. That's a really good book. I strongly recommend that people check that out. But you're right, there's a lot on this page that is worth mentioning.
Yes. So Anywhere you want to start?
Well, last week we mentioned that we had gotten an email from Carl Stevens. Right. He let us know that he really liked the show, and we're probably going to be interviewing Carl in October when his book Imitating Life, Success, and Other Stories comes out, and it's solicited here.
Yes. And that's a good-looking book. He co-wrote with Gustavo Turner.
Mm-hmm. And I tell you what, I'm also very excited about is the new book. Actually, it's not really new, from Dylan Horrocks, Incomplete Works.
Right.
Now, previously, Incomplete Works was only available outside of the United States, and I can't remember where it was published, but it was collected, and maybe out of New Zealand, which would make sense. But when Wolverton and I, early this year, were talking with Horrocks on an interview show, he had mentioned, he didn't tell us much detail, but he said, and I can't remember if he said it on mic or off, but he did mention that if we wanted to get copies of Incomplete Works, he just said, hold on a bit, and you can, in a much easier and less expensive way. And so this is what he was referring to.
Great. And just below that is another collection of previously published work that I'm really interested in, which is She's Not Into Poetry, a collection of Tom Hart's mini comics from 1991 to 1996. So Tom Hart, probably most famous for Hutch Owen. This stuff looks like fun. I like Tom Hart stuff, so I'll be getting that.
Yep. The other two that are solicited on this page as well under Alternative Comics, the ones we haven't mentioned yet, are ones that I'm wanting to look at as well. Mardou's Sky in Stereo. Iris, a young woman turning 18 in early 1990s Manchester, England, is slowly losing her tenuous grip on her world of burger flipping, drugs, and rock and roll. She takes a job at a burger bar at a train station where her crush on fellow burger flipper Glenn, there's a lot of burgers in the solicit, takes her down a dark path. And so this is a Revival House book, and that looks really good. And the one at the bottom of the page, Winners, by Anna Erlmark, who is a Swedish creator. That looks really interesting as well. Because I'm not familiar with her, but apparently she is, according to the solicit, well-known in Eastern Europe for her unconventional, twisted narratives and her striking visual style. And from the cover, I can tell that the style does seem rather striking.
Yep.
So a lot of good things distributed through Alternative Comics.
Yep.
Where do you go next? In
264.
Okay. What's there?
I just wanted to mention under Amistad Publishing at the top of 264 is a graphic novel adaptation of Walter Dean Meyer's Monster, adapted by Guy Sims and Graham Annable. And so this is a multiple award-winning young readers book that is being adapted, but it's basically in the coming-of-age story of Steve Harmon, a teenager awaiting trial for a murder and robbery. As he acclimates to juvie and experiences his trial, Steve envisions the ordeal as a movie, and the novel is in screenplay format. So this is going to be an interesting way to adapt that original novel to this form. So I'm curious about that. Also, it appears with its subject matter, especially, is going to be particularly timely.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything till 279.
Yeah, well, we may be talking about the same thing on 279. Arsenal Press.
Go ahead.
Arsenal Pulp Press.
Yep. Go ahead.
Suite Francais, Storm in June. This is an original graphic novel. This looks interesting. It says, Suite Francais, an extraordinary novel about village life in France, just as it was plunged into chaos with the German invasion of 1940, was a publishing sensation 10 years ago. Did you know about it then?
I had heard about it, but it is not something that I read.
Okay. Irene Nemirovsky completed the 2-volume book, part of a planned larger series in the early 1940s, before she was arrested in France and eventually went to Auschwitz, where she died. This dramatic and stirring graphic novel, translated from the French and faithful to the spirit of Nemirovsky's story, focuses on Book 1, in which a disparate group of Paris citizens flees the city ahead of the advancing German troops. However, their orderly plans to escape are eclipsed by the chaos spreading across the country, and their sense of civility and well-being is replaced by a raw desire to survive. So this sounds like, as with the previous title, something that is right up our alley that we could talk on a future episode about.
Yeah, and to pick out a kind of, artificial theme generated from this issue of previews, it feels like adaptations, especially really kind of interesting adaptations they're taking maybe works that we might not expect to see in graphic novel format, or taking doing interpretations of prose works in graphic novel format in interesting ways are showing up in this issue of previews.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. Mm-hmm. And what are you looking forward to next?
I go to the Big Planet Retrofit section on 290. I don't know if you have anything before that.
No, actually. Oh, that's right. I forgot that I had marked that. Now, these are things that we had talked about previously, but now they're being solicited.
Yep, so that's all I wanted to say. Debbie's Inferno by Ann Emond and Drawn Onward by Matt Madden. Drawn Onward, in fact, is one that we got into a pretty good discussion about, and we even heard back from Matt about our discussion.
Yeah, we did mention Emond's Debbie's Inferno, but we didn't talk much about it. But you're right, we did have quite a lot to say about Drawn Onward, and I enjoyed our back and forth with Matt, and I'm hoping that we can have him on the show in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah.
Because I know I said that several weeks ago, but I'll say it again, that right now that has to be one of my favorites of 2015.
Oh, yeah.
And then I go to the Boom Studio section next. I don't know if you have anything before that.
No, so what do you have in Boom?
Cognetic. This is written by James Tynion IV, illustrated by Eric Donovan. So this is, I guess, very similar to Memetic, same creators, a 3-issue miniseries. And they even, the way they describe it, it sounds quite a bit like Memetic. Did you read Memetic?
No.
I liked it. There was a part of me that just wonders if it was a little too short, but I don't know. I think it worked overall. And this seems somewhat similar. It's under the description what it is. Every human believes that they are self-reliant, self-determined individuals, each set on their own course. They've built civilizations, they've built culture, they've built lives. But what if that isn't the right track? What if there is a singular mind ready to take back control and finally write the destiny of mankind and build a better tomorrow? So the way that the solicit begins, and I'm not going to read through the entire thing, it does sound somewhat similar to Memetic. And I liked what they did with Memetic. I think that, and in fact, on the next page, on 297, the trade of that is solicited. So you could get a Tynion and Donovan double shot. I also, if you turn the page 298, issue number 1 of 4 of Mike Carey and Mike Perkins's Rowan's Ruin. Did you want to highlight that as well?
Yeah, I had that mentioned too. It's Mike Carey doing a horror title, so that's always good. It's like Mike Carey's working that, and I like Mike Perkins as an artist. He's one, worked on, I think Captain America, kind of filling in for Steve Epting when Brubaker was writing that, and Perkins has a similar style to that. So I like his art. I like Mike Carey doing horror, so I'm curious about this. And this has as its plot, the character named Katie does a house swap with. Katie lives in Florida. She does a house swap with someone in England, and she ends up going to this British home called Rowan's Rise and learning about the history of the house and how it's connected to nightmares she's having while staying there.
Yeah, this sounds good.
It just I can't. There was a movie a few years ago with Cameron Diaz and Kate Winslet where they swapped houses in England and the U.S. and it was a romantic comedy. I think Jude Law was in it. This is the horror version of that movie.
No, I'd prefer the horror version.
Yeah. And then on 299, the next page is a Lumberjanes special, Lumberjanes Beyond Bay Leaf, written by Faith Erin Hicks, which is pretty cool, and illustrated by Rosemary Valero O'Connell. So this is a one-shot in the Lumberjanes universe.
So if you're on the Lumberjanes bandwagon, this is definitely for you.
Yeah, and Faith Erin Hicks is a great creator to be working in the Lumberjanes world.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have in Boom.
Well, actually, this seems to be more fruitful month for Boom than it usually is with me, because if you turn to page 300, this is not one I'm going to get, but I do find it interesting. Iscariot, or Iscario, I don't know.
No, Iscariot, that would be.
Iscariot, yeah. With the pronounced T. S.M. Vaduri. This looks interesting. This is a graphic novel. I don't want to necessarily have to say much about that, but if you turn the page, a few pages later, 303, I do have a little bit to say about a couple things here. This is the first time that Boom's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep has been collected all in one volume. So this is the omnibus edition, and this is paperback.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you're a fan of the original Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep series, their adaptation from several years ago, but they're finally collecting everything in one volume. So that I wanted to mention, but I also wanted to mention that the trade of Paul Jenkin and Raymond Bach's Fiction Squad is coming out. I like that series.
Oh, good. I didn't read it.
Yeah, it's fun, and the reason I started reading it is because it just sounded a lot like Willingham's Fables, for obvious reasons, but this is specifically a murder mystery. I guess you could say murder mystery. Definitely a mystery where the main protagonist is a cop, a gumshoe, and he has to figure out some things that are going wrong in a kind of fable world that, again, is very much reminiscent of Willingham territory. So, but this is a fun title, and I highly recommend this. If you didn't read the original series, then the trade is something to get.
Mm-hmm. I jumped to Conundrum Press on 314, so if you have anything before then.
Wow, it's like we coordinated this month.
So Conundrum Press features a graphic memoir called Long Red Hair by Megs Fitzgerald, and this is about that young Megs hanging out with her friends at sleepovers and so on, realizes that there's something different about her, and as the solicit says, this book alluringly delves into the mystique of red hair and the beguiling nature of alternative romantic relationships. So this is yet another trend going from, not maybe in this volume of previews, but in very recent volumes of previews, there seem to be a lot of graphic memoirs about kind of coming of age as a young woman.
Right.
And we had Honor Girl, which we talked about last time. And did you get a copy of that?
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about that on a future episode.
I hope so, because I am really liking that. I'm not finished with it, but it's shaping up to be one of my favorites of the year. And so this seems to be a very, very interesting trend that's going on. There's several other books along these lines as well that we've mentioned in previous previews episodes. So I'll be curious to see.
Yeah, not only do there seem to be a number of these memoir comics that deal with coming of age, especially when it comes to sexuality and identity, but I just, in a more general way, have been noticing more over the past several months, more memoirs as a whole being solicited, or at least the ones that are capturing my attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, it's Conundrum, and I really do like Conundrum as a press. They come out with great things. Just last month, they solicited Dharma Punks, which is another one I hope to talk about on the show. And an earlier book of theirs was another Meigs Fitzgerald photo booth, a biography. Did you read that?
No.
I didn't either, but someone who reviews, Beth C., who reviews for our blog, did a review of that, and I've heard other people really, really praise this book, so it's something I'd like to check out at some point.
Yep.
And I go next to 326.
Yeah, so Dynamite.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
You too?
Yep.
A Train Called Love, #1. This is written by Garth Ennis with art by Mark Dos Santos. And it looks interesting. This is, I guess, they have comments from Garth Ennis himself. He says, "A Train Called Love is a love story I've been wanting to tell for some time, largely because people keep asking me about doing a romance comic." Who would be asking Garth Ennis to do a romance comic? I don't know. And the idea just wouldn't go away. This is what I came up with. Guns, gangsters, mayhem, big white hoods, dubious films with horses, mad Germans, obscene phone calls, crazy ladies, total losers, hot chicks, dishy guys, movie stars, lots of narcotics, terrible bands from Williamsburg, taxidermy, incontinence, unrequited crushes, a big fluffy white rabbit, and a rather unpleasant scene involving an escalator. Thus shall I explore the highs and lows of love.
Yep. That sounds like a Garth Ennis romance comic.
Right. So, and if nothing else that I've learned from this month's previews catalog is that people are clamoring for Garth Ennis to do a romance comic.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Well,
so that does look interesting.
He's done. He has worked his magic on other genres, war comics, horror. So why not?
Yeah. Where do you go in the catalog after that?
345.
Before that, I just want to make kind of a drive-by pass of Will Eisner's The Spirit #4. This is on page 338. For this reason, Dan, Schkady, you remember last week he called and left a message for us, which was great. And since then, he and I have gone back on Facebook a couple of times with messages. And he sent me a message, I think it was on either Thursday or Friday, and he had just listened to last week's episode where we talk about the DC collection, and he really enjoyed it. And he said, I was particularly interested about what you guys had to say about, Pagel as a character. He said, because as I was listening, I was working on the issue that brings in Pagel, and that's what is solicited in this month's catalog.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It all comes back to us.
How come I don't get included in any of these conversations you have? Or what are you leaving me out?
This is on Facebook.
I know.
I guess I could include
Facebook.
you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Have fun. Have fun with your new friends.
Okay.
Okay. What do you have on page 240.
You say you go where now?
345?
Yeah, that's where I go next.
Yeah. So what have you got?
Understandably so. Well, it's the Drawn and Quarterly section. Is that what you were going to mention?
Yeah. The two books that are in the Dover section, The Magician's Wife, and The Juggler of Our Lady, the classic Christmas story. Those two books look interesting as well, especially the Magician's Wife, which is an English translation of a French work from the mid-'80s. So,
yeah, and Dover's been doing that. In fact, I think just last month their release of Mercy, DeMatteis's just came out. So they're doing some of that reprint work. So yeah, I agree. Those looked interesting, but for me it is Adrian Tomini's Killing and Dying.
Yeah.
And as Drawn and Quarterly usually does, is when they feature new material, they'll include solicits from the previous works. And so on both page 345 and 346, you have more Tomini work as well. But really, Killing and Dying is what I'm really looking forward to. Although I've read basically everything that's in Killing and Dying.
Now, will this be the last 3 issues of Optic Nerve collected? Okay.
Yes, from everything I can gather, because it's 6 stories here.
Yeah.
And so the past 3 Optic Nerves, and they're the 3 Optic Nerves that have come out since Shortcomings.
Right.
Was released over 3 issues of Optic Nerve, and then of course that was collected as a graphic novel. But in each of the last 3 issues of Optic Nerve, they've included 2 stories.
Yeah.
Of varying lengths. Some are shorter than others, some are longer. But this is like what Tomini did in his earlier collections, like Sleepwalker or Summer Blonde, where it collects the short fiction. In fact, of the Optic Nerve collections, only one, Shortcomings, is one long, continuous graphic novel. The rest are just collections of individual stories. And so this is the next one, Killing and Dying. In fact, Killing and Dying is the title of one of the stories in that last Optic Nerve collection that Wolverton and I discussed the other month.
Right. It seems like every time an issue of Optic Nerve comes out, it's when I'm taking a break from the show, because I didn't get to talk about 13 either.
Oh, that's right, because I had Lan
Yeah.
on, and she and I discussed that.
But I really like the story Killing and Dying. I haven't listened to the podcast that you guys did on it, because I'm not on it. I don't care. I don't, because I don't get to hear myself breathing heavy into the microphone when I'm not on the show.
Okay, so next episode where you're not on, I'll breathe heavy into the microphone.
Then maybe I'll listen to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But getting back to Tomini and Drawn and Quarterly, I mean, if you've never read any Tomini and you wanted to see what he's about, basically order everything that's solicited here. It's not all of his work, but this gives you, I think, the majority of Tomini, because also on page 345 is 32 stories, and it's the definitive boxed edition set. And then if you go to 346, there's the aforementioned Shortcomings and Sleepwalker and Other Stories, and then Summer Blonde. So just Adrian Tomini smorgasbord.
Yeah. Well, I was in a comic book store a little while ago, not that long ago, and they had out on the shelves almost every issue of Optic Nerve. And though I've read the collections, I decided, no, I'm going to pick these up. So I already had 12, 13, and 14, but they didn't have the first 2 issues, but I got number 3 through 11. Now, Optic Nerve goes through multiple printings when it comes out, so these aren't all like first printings or anything like that. But I do like the individual issues, plus you get the letter pages in which you get to see people complain about Tomini, which is always seems like such a weird thing.
Yeah. Now, for the past 3 issues of Optic Nerve, there are, in addition to the 2 main stories that each issue includes, 1 or sometimes 2 one-page side comics or additional comics that are autobiographical in nature.
Right.
In other words, they're comics about him. I'm wondering if he's going to include those in Killing and Dying.
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll have to see.
I hope so. I really like him. He has a great self-deprecating sense of humor.
Sure. Anybody who would, publish almost exclusively letters that are criticizing him should feel that way.
Also, he is one of the few alternative comics creators still standing when it comes to individual comic book issues.
Yeah.
Almost everyone else has gone the way of the graphic novel.
Right.
Which actually leads us, unless you have anything before this, the Fantagraphics section.
No, go ahead.
How's that for a transition? Because you have Ed Piskor now, who is in the game of single issues, and so that's great. So we have issue number 3 of Hip Hop Family Tree solicited on page 354, but on both 354 and 355 we have a number of other Fantagraphics solicits that are worth mentioning.
Yes. There's a lot of stuff in here, too, that I want to get. Fantagraphics is continuing to be a great resource for reprints of underground comics.
Yeah.
And so the very first thing on this list is Vaughn Bodet's Cheech Wizard's Book of Me, which is one of the seminal underground comics. And so that is definitely worth checking out. Bodet, who died way too young, but his Cheech Wizard series is definitely a huge influence on generations of creators afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And then along with that, and still on that same page, is the Complete Women's Comics.
Yeah.
And this looks like it's in a boxed set. And so they're doing here now I guess the Bodet collection is in color, but in the Complete Women's Comics, this is in black and white. So it's like what they did recently with the 8-Ball collection. So these are nice boxed editions, but they're not in the original color. So you get them in the black and white.
Now, I just read all of women's comics when I was at Ohio State. I read the whole run. I don't think that they were in color.
Really?
I may be...
They weren't originally in color?
Yeah, I don't think so. I may be misremembering, because I read a lot of stuff then when I was there, and a lot of stuff by these same creators. Carol Tyre, Mary Fleener, Dori Seda, Phoebe Gleckner, and so on.
Right.
But I am pretty sure that women's comics is not in color.
Huh. Okay, because I have a few, I can't remember how many, but just a few issues of women's comics. And maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe I thought they were in color. I guess they may not be.
Yeah. Well, somebody can tell us if we're wrong or not, because a lot of these creators had were prolific in the early underground comics era as well. So there's a lot of I read a lot of stuff by these creators. So and this, I'm glad that they're putting this out as a kind of complete collection. It's a little less than the what was it? What was the other big underground collection that
Zap.
they did? Zap, yeah.
Zap, oh yeah.
That was pretty expensive. And this also contains It Ain't Me, Babe, which was the first kind of predecessor to women's comics that Trina Robbins had put out. And this series actually went on for a while. And the 10 women cartoonists who founded it were kind of a collective who rotated as editors of each issue as it came out. And so you see that generation of creators that was a part of the underground movement, and then some that were kind of coming out of it as influenced by them, like Phoebe Gleckner. I can't remember either if women's comics in some of the later issues had work by Alison Bechdel, but I think it did.
Oh, it did?
If it did, it's weird that they're not mentioning that, but I think so. I read women's comics at about the same time I was going through issues of gay comics, and so both of them, a lot of the creators overlap between the two series, so they may be blurring together.
Well, you had mentioned that Carol Tyler is a part of this.
Yeah.
On the other page, there's another one of her books of her father. This is Soldier's Heart, a World War II veteran's battle on the home front, a daughter's graphic memoir.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is an interesting thing that they're doing. This takes the 3 volumes of You'll Never Know and puts them together in 1 volume.
Yeah.
And I love You'll Never Know. I think You'll Never Know is just a beautiful and heartbreaking graphic memoir. So this I would highly recommend.
Well, another thing I'm very excited about, and this is on 354, also from Fantagraphics, Kaz's The Book of Underworld.
Yeah.
I don't know if you like Underworld. Strange, offbeat, strip, and I have some of those earlier collections, but not all of them. But this is, I guess, the complete Underworld.
Yep.
350 pages, so that's definitely something there. And then right above that is Jordan Crane's Uptight.
Uh-huh.
And I guess this collects those individual issues of Uptight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could spend an entire episode just talking about the Fantagraphics and maybe the Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly sections.
Yeah, that's true, because I'm sure you're interested in Frank in the Third Dimension as well, the 3D Frank book by Jim Woodring.
Yeah, I love Woodring, and I love Frank, and this is curious. It says, see Frank as you've never seen him before. Frank in the 3D Dimensions uses the most technologically advanced 3D ever produced and is an experience that has to be savored to be believed. No red and blue lens glasses are used. Instead, the 3D process involves over 150 layers per drawing in order to round and script each image into full 3D. The results are mind-staggering. Now, okay, I think that Frank comics are mind-staggering and other-dimensional to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So to get this in the format, the visual format that they're describing here, has got to absolutely blow your brain.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know if I can handle that.
Yeah. So do you want to say anything else about the Fantagraphics section? Because we're saying an awful lot about
I go to first, second next.
Yes, sir. So if you turn to page 356 and 357.
Yep. And so there's two things. The first one's probably the biggest, which is the the next volume of the Battling Boy spin-off books, Battling Boy: The Fall of the House of West, written by Paul Pope and J.T. Petty and drawn by the aforementioned David Rubin. So the Aurora West spin-off books from the main Battling Boy series, the second one's coming out. This kind of surprises me. I thought we would maybe see another Paul Pope solo Battling Boy book before we saw the second volume of the Aurora West books, but here it is.
That's what I thought, that they were going to. I thought they were going to stagger that. You know, Battling Boy, Aurora West, Battling Boy, Aurora West. But go figure.
Well, they got this done, so this is coming out, and so there won't be huge lags between Battling Boy material. So definitely we'll be getting that.
Mm-hmm. And then what other first, second did you want to?
And then on the next page, on page 357, is Human Body Theater by Maris Wicks, the all singing, all dancing anatomy extravaganza. I like Maris's work a lot. I like especially I don't know if you read Primates, the book that she did with Jim Ottavini for First Second.
I have it, but I haven't yet read it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really like that Maris does in these works for First Second is she's really good at doing these kind of educational comics like this in a really fun and engaging way. So this one sounds like it's right in that area as well. So, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to explain it, that a skeleton who's the MC of the Human Body Theater is putting on layers of costumes, of her costume with each act, I guess, building towards from the skeleton to the epidermis. So that sounds neat.
Yeah, and also sounds like something that should be set to They Might Be Giants music.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they do educational things like that. But I was going to say right under that is something else I'm really looking forward to, and that is Volume 3 of Last Man by Michael Senneville, Bastien Vives, and Balak. These are French creators, and earlier this year, First Second. God, I got Fantagraphics in my head now. Had published the first volume of Last Man, translated into English, and the second one. I know the second one was solicited, may be out now. I don't have it, but now the third one is being solicited here, and that's a really good series. I at least the first volume, I very much like that.
Okay. I jumped from there to 386. So unless you have anything in between.
386.
Yeah.
Nah. I mean, no. I mean, the reason I say that, I mean, I've bookmarked pages, but not necessarily something that I wanted to talk about on the show. So go. Yeah, I'm at 386 as well.
Yeah, with Lerner Publishing Group and First Man Reimagining Matthew Henson by Simon Schwartz.
Right.
Schwartz weaves biography and fiction together to explore the life of Arctic adventurer Matthew Henson, who was a member of early missions to reach the North Pole, but who was also happened to be African American. So that sounds like a really great merging of history and fiction to imagine the life of this important but otherwise basically forgotten to history individual.
Yeah, and we talked about Simon Schwartz several months ago.
Right.
The Other Side of the Wall.
Yeah.
Which is much more of a memoir. So yeah, I like that one, and this is one that I was interested in. On that next page, on 387, with Metropolitan Books, The Arab of the Future, a graphic memoir. This is by Riyad Sattouf.
Yeah. So growing up
another memoir.
Yeah, childhood in growing up in France, Libya, and Syria. That has a lot of potential.
Yeah, that's another one that is prime discussion material for the Comics Ultra. Everything we're soliciting is.
Yeah. So we're gonna have 270 episodes in October alone.
And this is something that I know we've mentioned on the show before, but maybe it's something that our listeners aren't aware of. That, I mean, at times it is agonizing trying to decide what to cut, because I think we talk a lot about a lot of great things, but there are many more titles. In fact, the ones that we want to talk about that we don't have time to far outweigh the number of titles that we actually do get to discuss on the show, just because we can only talk about so many things.
Yep. So I go to Oni next really quickly. If you have something before Oni.
What page is Oni?
393.
Okay, on 391, there is another No-Brow Press book, Curveball, by Jeremy Cerise. And I mentioned this. It looks interesting. I just got a review copy of this the other day, and I haven't looked at it yet. But because I got a review copy, I want to mention that it's been solicited in the No-Brow section on page 391. So check out No-Brow. Okay, so now on to Oni.
Yeah, and so the page 393 has yet another new creator-owned series by Cullen Bunn. So this is one of the 25 comics he's writing in the month of October or something. I pulled that number out, but that the guy's enormously prolific. And Blood Feud, Cullen Bunn with art by Drew Moss, doing another horror series which Cullen Bunn does so well. One of the things I really find interesting about this series is that each issue is going to come with a flip cover, so not a variant cover, but a flip cover that is an homage to a different classic horror movie every month. So that sounds like fun.
Yeah. But I swear, I don't know how this guy creates all the comics he creates.
And I don't know what else I have. I don't know. You got more stuff. Go ahead.
You mean for the rest of the catalog or just the Oni section?
No.
Okay. Because this, again, another long show. On page 402, there are a couple of publishers, I think, that are worth mentioning. Now, remember, last month we mentioned a publisher that I wasn't aware of before then, and that was Scout Comics, and they had solicited issue number 1 of Hench Girl, which, was a webcomic. Now issue number 2 is solicited, but also there is another title, Class Action number 1, and this is written by Neil Adams.
Yeah, and if it's like anything else that Neil Adams has done in the last few years, it's going to probably be batshit crazy.
Yeah. So something else to look for from Scout Comics, but also on that same page, Self-Made Hero. There are a couple of things here that I'm interested in. There's, I guess you could call this another graphic adaptation of Freud on Hysteria, where he talks about the famous Dora case. So there's that, but also there's Klaxon, written by Cy Spencer, with art by Dix. So Self-Made Hero always does good stuff. On page 406, Soaring Penguin Press. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of interesting titles there. It's Hard to Be a Girl, with writing and art by Estelle Backlard. And then Steve LeBlanc's Perfume of Lilacs. Mm-hmm. So I won't go over the solicits, but because again we're going kind of long here, but they did seem really interesting to me.
Is It's Hard to Be a Girl a memoir? The main character's named Estelle. I'm assuming that that's the case.
It seems.
I guess observant and keenly self-deprecating Bach, who she's referred to, it's
her commentary on everyday life. It doesn't come right out and say memoir, though.
Yeah, but if you're self-deprecating in a work, it must mean that she's including herself. So so there's potentially yet another graphic memoir.
Yeah. And if you turn the page, you mentioned earlier Faith Erin Hicks. Yeah. Well, she's got Friends with Boys coming out from Square Fish Press. Uh-huh. This is on 408.
Well, so that's, I think, a follow-up to her earlier work. Mm-hmm. Was it Friends with Girls?
Yeah. And then there are just a couple of other things I wanted to mention. I'm assuming you don't have anything else.
No, I'm done.
Okay.
The Faith Erin Hicks thing was the last thing I had.
Oh, okay. On page 442 in the Viz Media section, actually it's 443, this is One Punch Man, and I want to mention this for a couple reasons. This is apparently a really popular digital manga title that Viz is coming out with the first 2 volumes. Very soon. One Punch Man, Volume 1 and Volume 2. But I also want to mention this I think that Shay and I are going to discuss this in a future manga show. Cool. It's something that Shay recommended. So I'll go with his recommendation because he's helping to educate me in the world of manga.
Great.
Yeah. And then finally on page 450, this is in Z2 Comics, and we've talked about Z2 a little in the past. This one is called the Abaddon, written and drawn by Corin Shadmi. It says, a young man finds himself trapped in a bizarre apartment with a group of ill-matched roommates. He quickly discovers that his new home doesn't adhere to any rational laws of nature and poses a strange enigma, a puzzle he must solve to escape. And then it goes on to describe it. But so that sounds intriguing, but what really got my attention is that the solicit compares it to Sartre's No Exit.
Yeah, it says it's loosely based on it, so it's not even just a comparison. Like, this is like No Exit meets Pretty Woman.
Pretty Woman.
It is a kind of modern adaptation of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would have to be very, very loosely based, because just that part of the solicit that I read, the only thing that smacks of huis clos or No Exit is they're in a room.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's all I have in the August catalog.
Okay, I'm done too.
I think that's enough.
Yeah.
So just as we did last month, we got to spend a lot of time talking about a lot of the great stuff in the month's previews catalog. And if you want to get this stuff, if you want to pre-order at a great discount, you can't go wrong by visiting the website of our sponsor, and that is Discount Comic Book Service. So go to dcbservice.com and you will find mind-bending, like Frank Woodring level mind-bending discounts, 3D and otherwise, on every single title that we have just brought up in this preview show.
Yeah, so check that out.
Yes, and after you do pre-order your comics there, get in touch with us and let us know what you think about our recommendations. If you go to our webpage, comicsalternative.com, you'll find on the right-hand side of the browser a tab that says Send Voicemail. Click on that, and from the comfort of your own desktop or mobile device, you can send us a message through the wonders of SpeakPipe. It's very easy to use. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way. Our phone number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
That's right, or you can get a hold of us by email. We are 2guys@comicsalternative.com, or you can get a hold of us individually. I'm Andy at comicsalternative.com.
And I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com.
And we have our Twitter feed, where we announce new content to the podcast as well as updates to the blog. You can check out our Twitter feed at the number 2 guys with PhDs.
That's right. You can also find us on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Google+, and on Pinterest. You can also check out our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes, and when you do, please do send us and leave us a rating and review. We appreciate that, like, some of the people that we highlighted at the top of the show. You can also find us on Stitcher and on TuneIn, and of course, you can find every single one of our episodes, and right now that is at over 270, as well as all of our reviews and comics-related commentary that we put up on the blog by visiting our website, which is comicsalternative.com.
That's right, all the ways to get a hold of us and find out what we're doing.
Yeah, and also you can contact us like Jeremy Barnes did this past week and tell us to keep our shows a little less than 2 hours, which this is going to be another longer one because there's so many good things in the previews catalog.
There you go.
Yeah. So let us hear from you, whether we do a long or a short show. And until then, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy. See ya.
Yes, we go. birthday to you.